All right. So Frankie and Niall are going to be passing microphones. So just raise your hand when you have one. They'll get the mic over to you. And yep, looks like we're all set.
Hi, Cass Marshall, Red Bull Esports. This question is for Bjergsen and Double Lift. So you guys have been going through the NALCS, you've been winning titles, and then you go to Worlds pretty regularly now. And I'm wondering how you sort of keep motivation when you have these very long-term efforts to achieve that international success that don't always work out. How do you keep motivation and sort of avoid burning out?
It's always been pretty easy for me because of my love for the game, I think. I really enjoy the game. I like figuring out what's good, what's good in the mid lane meta, what's good for my team, and how we should play. And there's always things to improve on. So throughout the split, I hardly ever feel like we're the best team by far, that no one else can touch us or no one else can beat us. And until we reach that point, it's really easy to stay hungry and keep wanting to improve because I don't feel like we are the supreme best team.
I think that actually is an issue. Like last year, for example, after we won NA, I thought that was like such a cool thing, and we won against C9, who was also a really strong team in the finals, and to be able to win with TSM after the previous split, losing to CLG in the finals was like a really big deal to me. I think for now, it's not a big deal to any of us to win anymore. It's like it's almost expected. We just came to pick up the trophy, so we're all thinking about Worlds. But maybe last year, at least for me personally, I didn't have as much of a love for the game as I do now, where it's like it's fun for me to play solo queue, it's fun to scrim, and I actually really just enjoy playing and competing. So, yeah, it'll be a big difference this year.
Is this on? Yeah, cool. This is for Hanser. Being in at the beginning of the split, everybody was talking about how do you feel about playing against Flame and Sunday with all the influx of Korean talent. Considering how this season went for you, what do you think in retrospect of the incoming talent that came into the top lane?
When they first joined NA in Spring Split, I felt like they were pretty lackluster, and they weren't playing to what was expected of them. Everyone thinks Korean tops are really good, but Spring Split, they didn't, I guess, find their groove. And I was also able to get a lot more resources back in spring. And now in summer, because Double is back, we're spreading it out more. And I'd say they've definitely improved as individuals. Someday Flame have definitely gotten a lot better, and they're not as bad as they were in spring. But in terms of top lane talent, I still count them as some of the best.
For Biofrost, you had a ton of critics this split. You had people saying you're B tier, right? You had Ole being number 1, you had Smoothie as number 2, and then come this finals, you're outperforming the All-Star NALCS support in Ole. You're doing really well, and you even got your team the trophy in Game 4. You had some amazing engages, and you were just outperforming everyone on the stage for a large part. How does it feel to do so on such an important match for TSM this split?
I'm just happy that we won the game because early game I didn't do too well, and I needed to make up for it somehow. So Rakan, his primary benefit, I guess, is his engage, and I practiced really hard on his engage for the past couple of weeks, and I knew that I could do it. So I think Ole is a really good player. He's played well all split long, and his roams, I think, are the best defining thing about him. He always roams at good times where it really messes up the enemy mid laner, and yeah, he's just really good. So he deserves the recognition that he got, and yeah, they just played well overall.
But Vincent's the best. That's what he's trying to say.
Hi, Travis Gafford here for Travis Gafford. Double Lift, during the teaser or one of the promos, you mentioned something about how you respect Cloud9 and CLG, and you kind of want to keep IMT out of the Winners Club, and you like that it's just the 3 of those teams. How long do you think it'll take before another team can enter that Winners Club?
It was pretty close this split. I think Dig and IMT actually had a real shot at winning. But after this, I don't know. It's pretty devastating for both of them, this split. I think it's going to be a while. I like the Winners Club because it's 3, and I've won 3 championships, and this is the 3rd TSM championship in a row. 3 is a good number. I like 3.
Hi, Chesney Latugo with BuzzFeed. This is for Sven Skaren. How did you prepare knowing you were going against Smithy today?
I mean, I didn't really prepare anything special because we already knew a lot of their strategies and how aggressive they are in the early game. I just know from the scrims that they usually prioritize a lot of the early wards to get on the red and then try to invade at level 3. So knowing that, we just try to counter it by like stacking and making sure they don't get the ward for free, which they usually always got in our scrims. So yeah, we just knew that, and I think with the meta in the jungle right now, it's not really up to the 1v1 kind of. So just lucky that I'm on the better team. So even if he was a better player, it didn't really matter the series just because of how the meta is.
Hello, I'm Mike Parati with the Game House. My question's for Sven. Every year, it's always attributed that you get a playoff buff. Where do you think that really comes from?
I don't think I played that well this playoff, so maybe it's just a false thing. I think just usually being better in the playoffs is because we have more time to prepare for one specific opponent. So we can really go into all the scrims and just like always be super harsh on yourself, because when you do something that worked against the opponent, you can always see like, okay, this actually wouldn't work against X team you meet in the playoffs. So I think it's just a lot easier to be very hard on yourself and just you go into every scrim with like more focus and goal.
Hi, Aaron McCunis with Dottie Sports. My question's for Bjergsen. In Game 3, you guys were down about 5,000 gold, and that one Orianna ult set your team on track to potentially come back. You guys were still down quite a bit after that fight. How do you keep your cool, knowing that as long as you guys keep on that same track, you could potentially win the game?
I don't really think it's difficult to keep my cool if we're behind, because I think we're all just focusing on how we can win and what we can do next. No one spends time thinking about, oh my god, we're losing, oh my god, this is going so badly. We're all just focused on the next thing, what our comp can do, what our win condition is, and we were constantly talking about once we reach certain items or my flash is up, because their combo is largely based on trying to kill me with like the Jarvan Shen combo, and that worked for them in the early game. But then once we reached the point where we were confident that we were going to win, we just took as many fights as possible. But for staying cool, I think it's easy for all of us. We've been on stage many times, all of us, played in the finals. We've been behind many games, and just another day of the job, I guess.
Gabriel Zoltan Johan of the Score Esports. This question is for Double Lift. You went on hiatus over the course of Spring Split. You come back at the end of this split, you're a champion. What do you feel is the difference between the state of AD carries in the LCS when you left to how it is now? Have they improved at all? You still are standing at the top. Have you felt that you've improved even more than they have? What's the state of AD carries in the LCS as it stands?
Well, when I stopped playing, Jhin was really OP, and I don't know why. I think I have a mental block or something on Jhin, but we just never win our Jhin games. Like at Worlds last year, and every time I play Jhin, something really bad happens. But then when I came back, they nerfed lethality, so like Jhin and Varus weren't as prevalent, and it came back to auto-attacking AD carries like Caitlyn and Ashe, and now it's a lot of like Tristana, Kalista, and Xayah. So I think I have a better knack for those type of champions personally, and in the break, I was just playing like whatever in solo queue and just trying to climb the ladder. But then when I come back to competitive, I need to like play my champion to provide value to my team, like whether it's in team fighting or it'll provide CC or it'll have early pressure in lane. Like I need to provide some value to my teammates, and part of that is just being really proficient on certain champions, like the ones that are really meta or the ones that I believe and my team believe is OP. So yeah, it's been really fun. I guess it's a lot of AD carries are viable right now, and it's really fun.
This question is for Hanser. This split we saw there was it was very difficult for individual TSM players to sort of get ranked highly. TSM was considered the strongest team as a unit, but individual players didn't necessarily stand out. I'm wondering how you felt about that. Was that part of the discourse you engaged in at all, or was it frustrating to sort of lack that level of recognition?
Well, coming into the split, we kind of had to find our groove again because we're playing with Peter again, and it's kind of like a fresh start for us as a team. We have to learn the meta, like reintroduce like basic fundamentals that we have to learn all over again, and so it wasn't really focused on our individual play, and we were more focused on learning as a team, getting better as a team. We realized after the loss at MSI that that's what's really important. It's not about individual play. Like you can sack one side of the map and then like get a lead on the other side, but then in the end it doesn't really help you get ahead as in game. So we're more focused on team play now and less individual stuff, and I think that's what makes us a really strong team.
Hi, I'm Julia Lee from the Rift Herald, and my question is for Doublelift and Biofrost. Throughout this season, you see a lot of great bot lane duos, and then you see a lot of great individual bot lane players. What do you think the difference is there between just like being a great duo together? Because everyone thinks of Biolift or Double Frost or whatever y'all are. And then there are teams where you're just like, oh yeah, individually they're very good, but it doesn't really come out on stage.
What? Sorry. So your question is, what do I think the difference is between the good duos and just the good players? I think the good duos, I don't know. It's really weird. I've always been part of like really good duos, like me and Chester, and then me and Afro, and then me and Bio. We have always been like pretty good. I think part of it is just not being afraid to tell each other things that we don't like that the other person does, and also things that we do like. Because if you're just constantly criticizing someone, or you're afraid to criticize them, I think that's a really big problem with the duo lane. So just always being on the same page after a while, you kind of know, you get a feel for your lane partner when you're always telling them like, hey, we should try this, or I think this is good and I think this is bad. So just having like an open talk all the time. I think a lot of the time during this split we had a lot of problems just because we weren't playing the right champions, or we were playing in the wrong way, or other bot lanes were out roaming us or just outplaying us 2v2. So just always learning, always talking to each other is the most important thing. Even if you're a great player, if you can't communicate well, you're not going to be able to show it.
I can't get out of this by saying what he said, right? Okay. I think a lot of other bot lane duos, they have great mechanics, but it kind of just doesn't really extend out of that. I think a good example of a duo that might not have like the best mechanics but are really strong as a duo together are Altec and Adrian. They really know how to manipulate waves, and they're good at deciding whether or not to roam or to stay in lane, and they're really efficient with their back timers. So as a duo, they work really well, but even though mechanically they might not be the best, like some AD carries like Piglet, he's really, really strong in lane, but even then, Altec and Adrian work really well as a duo lane.
Albert for Esports Heaven here. So this is to Doublelift. Last year, you took down NA, and then you left for a split, and you came back. Is this the time that TSM goes to Worlds and actually makes it, past quarterfinals, makes some noise, and like lives up to the recognition that they've been getting, or is it, another TSM at Worlds meme?
Well, Dennis was talking about this a little bit after in the post-game interview at the desk, but we came in last Worlds pretty cocky. We thought that we were a top 14. We're like, yeah, we're going to win it. And then we were all super crushed when we started losing in the group stages because it was like, whoa, like we weren't supposed to lose. I think coming into this one more humble and just being a lot, like we were hungry last time, but I think we just didn't have a great approach to practice. And yeah, our mentality was just wrong coming in. But I think coming into Worlds thinking like a winner, but also being humble at the same time is just so important because every team is so good. You can lose the other game. Like your pride can be wounded if you get solo killed, or if if you're just making a lot of mistakes because his players are also just equally as good as you. I think like we had a lot of problems last year, but then this year we're just going to be able to learn from that. And part of that is just being able to come back from bad situations when we make mistakes, which we didn't have that skill last year.
My question's for Biofrost. We're seeing a lot of other regions and a lot of other teams focus on Ardent supports, whereas today you and Ollie seem to be going back and forth on the playmakers. Why do you think there's really that kind of disconnect?
I think in other regions they have different pick and bans where Recon isn't up, and Recon is a really essential part to draft where if he's up, then you have to play around him because he's such a strong pick. If he's down and some other champions go down, then it goes to the Ardent sensor supports because they're the next best thing. And if you play safe in the early game with an Ardent sensor support, you're going to outscale a playmaker like Alistar, and it just depends on if your team can play around that, and that's Spike. Because a lot of the other teams are playing like Lulu. I know in Korea they're playing Lulu into like Blitzcrank, and if Lulu survives early game, then she just outscales really hard with Ardent Sensor, and it'll be really obnoxious for Blitzcrank to even make anything happen. So I think there's just a bit of a disparity in play styles there, and it's also different because of the draft.
This question's for Bjergsen. What do you say to critics who are confused or disoriented by the fact that you won split MVP, even though you came second in the all LCS voting?
I think there was a different voting for MVP, which I didn't really even know. I mean, people will have their favorite players or their players that they think perform better than me, and I think that's completely fair. I know some players did outperform me in certain ways, but I think why I was recognized as the MVP is the value that I bring to my team, and hopefully my teammates feel the same way, but the value I bring that helps us win and helps us get onto this big stage and actually make a difference. But yeah, there are a lot of great individual players in the LCS, but like Peter said, if you can't communicate, if you can't lead your team, it doesn't matter how good you are, you're not going to win.
This question's for Doublelift. You've, since the beginning, have been known for your trash talking. And so some regions have trash talk segments. We don't in NA. Is there any player that you wish you could kind of have like a back and forth trash talk segment?
Call him out.
Call him out. I don't know. I think there's some players in NA who just kind of force it, like Dardoch, because they came in with no fans and they just want to make a name for themselves. I don't know. I have bad luck when I talk trash because when I talk trash, I always lose, and I'm just superstitious, I guess. Now I don't even care about what the fans say. I just don't want to lose. But yeah, overall, I think part of it is you get crucified so hard by the community when you talk trash and then your team loses. So I don't feel like I get any extra points when I talk trash and we just crush and we're already expecting to win. I think the most hype is if we talk trash at Worlds. I'm not saying that I will or that we won't, but if we talk trash at Worlds, it's like actually good teams with stuff on the line we're not expected to win, and that's more fun than just like beating up kids at the playground.
This question is for Sven Skaren. For a while, TSM rotated junglers. You went through a few different picks before settling on that pick. Now you've been with TSM, really solidified your place on the team and part of the foundation of the team. I'm wondering if you feel like you've hit your ceiling in terms of developing with TSM. Like how much room for growth do you think you have, even though you've kind of settled in and there isn't that large-scale change anymore?
Yeah, so even though I've been with TSM for a long time, I think there's obviously still a lot of stuff I can improve on. Like, we already have 3 very vocal players in the team, like Kevin and Björk and Doublelift, but I think I can still improve on just being more assertive and just when I believe something is right, like calling it out more. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff I can still improve on, even though I've been in the team for a long time.
This question is for Vincent. Vincent, so in the second half of the game, especially in that final game, you played really well. Now, over the past 6 weeks or so, you've had an intense war of words between you and LCS analyst Mark Zimmerman. And I was just kind of curious, do you feel like your performance today finally lays to rest, any criticisms he's levied against you?
I'm not sure if Mark Z said this, but he was like wondering why Dignitas was banning Rakan, because like he probably thought I just didn't play the champion because I have champion pool issues. And honestly, in the regular split, I did have some issues where we weren't playing the right champions, and we weren't playing the right champions basically. So I think in playoffs, of course, every player is going to have their limitations on champion pool. You can't just play every champion for every specific situation. So I think my champion that I practiced really hard on this playoffs was Rakan. And yeah, I was able to play that today. And I think I played decently on it. Not like the best in the last game, but yeah, I also played Alistar, and Mark Z was also questioning why I wasn't picking it, because these were the playmakers that were constantly being played. And I ended up playing those champions. And for some of the other picks, of course, every support has their own thing. Like Ole has Bard, and then Aframu, he plays a lot of Morgana. And yeah, everyone just has their specialties, so.
Albert for Esports Heaven here. This is to Bjergsen and Svenskeren. What mid lane and jungle duos do you want to play against at Worlds?
Oh, wow, that's a really tough question. I don't know where to start. What do you think, Dennis? Give myself some time to think.
Not really sure. I don't know. Just all the Korean teams, I guess. They're looking pretty good.
I think the game isn't as based around the 2v2 mid as it kind of used to be, so I don't really think of the mid jungle as a 2v2. It highly depends on what champions you're playing. If you end up playing stuff like LeBlanc, that becomes a lot more relevant how the jungle and mid interacts, but largely in some of the games, especially here in the final one, we're just playing stuff like Corki. It's really more about getting the right vision and kind of playing with your team. So it's going to depend a lot on the meta at Worlds, whether the 2v2 specifically between jungle and mid is even important at all.
Control mids plus tank jungle. Good team too.
Connor Smith with Dot Esports. My question is for Double Lift. So leading up to the first MSG finals, there was a lot of hype surrounding the actual venue, like the Road to the Garden. And since then, we've seen a lot of finals and competitions in some really big sports stadiums. Is it still special? Is there still that feeling of, like, is it surreal, or are you starting to get used to it?
I think it was really special for me when I won my first ever time at Madison Square Garden, and then it was also really special when I won for the first time with TSM, and it felt really, really good to win with that same squad that we'd, well, with the exception of Bio, but we just lost the previous split against LG. That one was in Vancouver. This one, I think it's always fun to play with the crowd, and it's especially really hype when you're in this huge venue and you make this huge play. Like when we were coming back and we just won team fight after team fight, it felt so good to hear the crowd screaming because they're just getting hyped. And this is like an unbelievable comeback. It gives you a lot of energy, I guess. But yeah, I guess it's not as special in terms of the venue size. It's more just like playing at this big event. And on the flip side, you can assume that the enemy team's tilting really hard when the crowd is cheering against them.
Oh, hello? All right. Jared from the Game House. My question's for Biofrost. And I think there's always going to be a lot of questions about that Game 4 because that was really historical, you guys come back. So my question is kind of for you because I think your Rakan really stood out for me is that turning point. And particularly all your macro play. Like it felt like you as a team were taking the fights that you needed to take even though you were 10K behind. So for you, my question is, how does it feel to be that kind of that playmaker in that moment? Not just that you were making the play, but you had your whole team behind you. The instant happened. What was that? Kind of this intrinsic synergy that you guys have built up. Is that something you've been working on? Your macro play looked amazing. Kind of, what were the emotions, I should say?
I think early game we didn't play to our strengths where we're a comp that scales a lot, and we just took a lot of early game fights, so that was part of the reason why we were down like 10K. And when we're in the mid game or like late game team fighting, it just comes down to Rakan getting a good engage. And even if you're like 5 or 10k down, if you get a good engage and insta kill someone, then you're gonna win the team fight. And in those engage timings, I didn't really think about if I mess this up, we're gonna lose the game. It's just if I don't do this right now, then we're gonna end up losing anyway. So this is the only shot we have, and if I do it, then we're gonna come back. And I think in that mid game, like mid lane team fight where we were down like a lot and we just came back, and then we started winning every team fight after that. It just felt really natural to be able to do it again and again after the first time it worked. And I think we just got into a groove after the first team fight that we won.
This question's for Sven. The last time you were in East Asia for Worlds, your participation was kind of cut short a bit. Do you have any a message for East Asian TSM fans or East Asian players or consumers of League who remember that, and do you have anything to say in the lead up to going back there for Worlds?
I mean, I think I've matured a lot over the past 3 years where I've been in TSM, so I'm not really concerned about anything happening because, yeah, I just matured a lot, and I guess if people are still like offended by it, then I could say sorry, but I think it's been quite a while, so I don't think, at least I don't get messages anymore that people are offended by it, so I think people moved on, and yeah, I matured a lot, so I don't think, like, it doesn't mean anything anymore.
Albert for Esports Heaven here. To Hanser, what top laners do you want to play against at Worlds?
Let's see. From Europe, I'd say. Wait, I don't even know who's going to Worlds from any other region. Huh? G2 Misfits? Oh. Oh, I don't think too much about them. So, probably LZ's Khan. He has played a lot of carry tops, and he's performed really well in them. He's really confident in himself, and looks like he's the best top in LCK right now. So definitely want to play against him. SKT tops are always really solid, and they know how to play well. So there's stuff to learn from there. I haven't really paid attention to China as much as well, so those would be my answers.
Guys, we have time for like 2 more questions. Let's see.
This one's for Bjergsen. With the upcoming season changes to basically everything, how are you going to prepare to play differently than all of the past seasons?
I like all the changes for season, I don't even know what season, 8? I don't know. I haven't really spent too much time thinking about that yet because we still have Worlds to go. So I think we're going to have a long off season for me to. There's always big changes to the game, right? And there's always a certain level of adaptation. And so I don't really think it's too much different than any other year. It's just there's a bigger change to runes, masteries, and things like that. But I think I'm a player at least that's willing to try a lot of new things and potentially fail at it. And that's really going to be what Spring Split's about: is people, figuring out what's good and figuring out what Season 8 is about, because it's going to be such a big change that initially, I feel like sometimes when there are a lot of big changes, myself and the team, we might not look the best. We usually drop games on big patches during LCS, but I know that we're a team that consistently works hard, so no matter what the changes are, eventually we'll figure them out and we'll be the best again.
This question's for Bjergsen. TSM has always been the biggest brand in North America, to the point where at the Immortals fan meet yesterday, when they entered, there were TSM chants. I'm just wondering if there's ever a point where, the fan attention, the chants, does that ever become overwhelming, or do you get burned out on that fan attention and acclaim?
Not at all. I think playing on this big stage, especially in this round stage that Riot has now, it feels awesome because there's fans kind of all around us. No matter where I look, I hear chants, I hear people yelling, and like Peter said, it only gives me energy when I come out or I hear them during the game when we're in these crazy team fights. There's no point where that's ever really a negative to me. Of course, I don't want fans to be kind of bashing on our opponents and putting them down. I would rather have them hype us up, but I feel like that is what the fans do.